Welcome to our 60th monthly Zoom presentation. This marks 5 full years of SCA Zoom presentations, an achievement born out of necessity during the pandemic, but something we can all be very proud of. I'm Brian Gallaugher, the president of the Society for Commercial Archaeology. I'm proud to be your host for tonight's presentation. And tonight, for something a little different, I'm part of it. Welcome to all of our guests, any new people that we have with us. We're happy you took the time out of your late spring evening to watch an SCA presentation, and I hope you enjoy the show. And for anyone watching the recording of this episode of the SCA's monthly presentations who's not a member of the SCA, we earnestly ask you to consider joining. Funding for the various activities of the SCA comes almost exclusively from our membership. Just visit the website at www.sca-roadside.org and follow the links. Now I have the pleasure of introducing our presenters. SCA tour guide extraordinaire Kevin Patrick needs no introduction to those who've had the pleasure of experiencing his entertaining and informative commentary on SCA tours. Tonight, he'll be giving us a tantalizing taste of how you can have a barrel of fun, trademark registered, at the SCA's 48th annual conference. And I'm very pleased to be Kevin's straight man. If Kevin's Johnny Carson, then I'm Ed McMahon. Anybody under the age of 50 probably won't get that. In just a month, from June 18th to 21st, the SCA will have its first international conference in the SCA Mecca of Niagara Falls. Kevin and I will regale you with background information on the extensive tourist-related story of the falls that will set the stage for the 48th annual convention. We will tempt you with news and views of some of the attractions that conference goers will revel in, from Table Rock to Prospect Point, the Maid of the Mist to the Whirlpool Aero Car, the Floral Clock to the Prophet Isaiah House, the Flying Saucer Diner to the Lake Effect Diner, and dozens of places in between. Kevin is a geography professor at Indiana University of Pennsylvania, located in Indiana, Pennsylvania. How confusing is that? He has taught at IUP since 1993. He received a BA from Glassboro State College, a master's from the University of Illinois, and his doctorate in geography at the University of North Carolina. He's been a member of the SCA since 1987 and served on the board from 2010 to 2017. I am a city planner by profession, now retired. I've lived in Toronto, Ontario my whole life, except the 4 years I spent obtaining my planning degree at the University of Waterloo in Waterloo, Ontario. I joined the SCA in 1996, was elected to the board in 2020, and now have the pleasure of serving as the organization's president. Now, there are still spaces available at our conference. So after tonight's presentation, if you haven't already registered, please go to the SCA's website to learn all the details and to register today. Now, give me 1 second while I share my screen because I'm part of the presentation tonight. Okay. Now, I'm very well qualified to give tonight's presentation because there's a picture of myself, that's me there, and my older brother standing in front of the floral clock. And as you can see, the date is 1958. I'm 4 years old there. And so I'm well familiar with Niagara Falls from a very early age. I'm going to give us some of the logistical information, and Kevin will talk more about the tours itself. Our conference hotel is called the Brock Hotel. It was previously, until about a month ago, the Crown Plaza, but they changed the name back to the Brock Hotel, which is the historic name of this building that was built in the 1920s. You can see it's a heritage-looking building. We will be having our conference banquet up in and also the paper sessions up in the top floor with a beautiful view of the falls. This is the lobby of the building. See a picture of Marilyn Monroe here because Marilyn Monroe stayed at this hotel when she filmed the movie Niagara. And you can actually stay in, or at least see, the room that she slept in when she was staying at Niagara Falls. The other conference hotel, we have two, is the Sheraton Falls View, and they're both under the same management then they're linked, they're side by side and linked by a covered or interior passageway. This building, as you can see, is quite a bit newer. The rooms are more modern and larger. And so if you care to stay at the conference hotel, but you don't want to stay in an older hotel with smaller rooms, then the Sheraton is your bet. You can see that both of these hotels, the Brock, Niagara Falls View, to give its full name, situated right here, and the Sheraton, which is right beside it, are right at the Canadian end of the Rainbow Bridge. So one of the persons that's already signed up for the conference has said, well, I was planning to take an Uber from the Buffalo Airport to the Rainbow Bridge, and I've been told I can walk across it, and you absolutely can. If you can get there, you can walk across this bridge. It takes about 10 minutes. You get a beautiful view of the falls, and you arrive right at our conference hotel. But there's lots of other options for accommodation in Niagara Falls, Canada as well. There's all sorts of Airbnbs. There's all sorts of low rent hotels, but they're still very nice. So just go on Expedia or one of those, and you can find all sorts of options. Wrong way. So on Wednesday night, when the conference starts at 6 p.m., we will be having our opening reception at the sumptuous Queen Victoria Place restaurant, which is run by the Niagara Parks Commission. It's a very nice restaurant. We have this open air deck here, which, if there is inclement weather, can be closed by transparent curtains. But June 18th in Niagara Falls, Canada should be absolutely perfect. Balmy weather. It'll be a real treat. And this is maybe 500, 400 feet from the falls. We have a perfect view of the falls. And that's good because in the evening, they illuminate the falls. And part of the deal is that we have the SCA's colors, which are red and white, will be used to illuminate the falls for 15 minutes, starting at 8:45. So you don't want to miss that. The second day, which is Thursday, June the 19th, is a tour of SCA attractions on the Canadian side of the border. Two optional things that we can do are the Maid of the Mist and the Niagara Aero Car. These are both classic SCA attractions. We have allowed time for them in the tour on that day, but these are optional. You have to pay a little extra to go on these particular attractions. We'll be having lunch that day at the Flying Saucer Restaurant. And this is actually a historical picture of the restaurant from about the early 1960s. It's now much larger. There's two of them. Now there's two pods joined together. We will be taking over the whole restaurant for the SCA lunch that day. And it's a real experience, let me tell you. That's included in the conference registration. After touring a whole bunch of sites on the Canadian side, we will come back. Dinner will be on our own, and then we will have a tour of what's called Clifton Hill, which is the center of the ticky-tacky, down and out, and also fairly high-end attractions in Niagara Falls. This is the carny part where everybody goes to play video games and wax museums and the whole ball of wax. They got it all. The next day, Friday, is paper presentations. We have about 8 very interesting papers lined up. We'll also be having an SCA business meeting, and during this day, we will have a very nice lunch in the Rainbow Room of the Brock Hotel, the full view of the falls. That's all included in your registration. That evening, if you haven't had enough of Clifton Hill the night before, we will have guided tours of Ripley's Believe It or Not, who has 2 locations, actually 3 locations on Clifton Hill. And we have arranged for behind the scenes tours of these places and also free admission. On Saturday, we'll cross the border into the US of A and do the very interesting SCA sites on the American side of the border. Here's a map of the Niagara Falls, New York. The falls are just down here. This area is now completely different. This map is from about 1920, maybe a little earlier, actually maybe 1912. It shows the falls as it was when it was a real tourist attraction. This area was completely cleared by Robert Moses and turned into a much more modern during the 1950s. way of dealing with the falls, and to my mind, not nearly as good, but Kevin Patrick will have lots to say about that, as will I as well. It doesn't look like this anymore, but at least we have some maps and lots of pictures to show what it used to look like. That evening, after touring the United States for 6, 7, 8 hours, I guess, or even longer than that, we will have our closing banquet again back in the Brock Hotel, and we're going to have a very nice dinner to close off the evening on the Saturday and to close off the conference. We hope this doesn't happen. You never know, with the weather being so crazy it has been. If we don't get enough rain, maybe, but I don't think so. I'm not too worried. Lots of ways to get to Niagara. The closest major airport is in Buffalo, New York, and that's a big airport, lots of service there. There are many ways to get from the Buffalo airport, which is probably about 30 miles from Niagara. Lots of different options for that. But the lucky people that live in New England and along the Hudson corridor are able to take an Amtrak train, which goes daily from New York and Albany right to Niagara Falls, Canada. It continues on to Toronto, and it's about a 10-minute transfer from the train station through to the conference hotel. Very, very convenient, and the prices are right. But you will need a passport. Although I'm told that there's also such a thing as an enhanced driver's license that you can get that will get you across the border as well. But don't come without one of those, because you won't get across the border. There's lots of other things to do too if you want to make it into a longer vacation. Niagara, the Niagara region in Ontario is a very well-known wine growing region. Lots of good wines and just beautiful wineries for touring. Just north of the conference area is a town called Niagara on the Lake, a very quaint town set up as in the late 19th century. And of course, you're about 60 miles away from Toronto, and there's a frequent rail commuter service actually between Niagara Falls and Toronto. So you can take a day trip in there. It's very inexpensive and it's a good rail service. And for those that are coming, and I hope that's all of you, you must make sure to gear up, buy your Niagara Falls t-shirt. They're available on the SCA's website. I am wearing mine right now, as you can see. So I would encourage everybody who's watching this show, and we will send this to all the members as well, to register for the conference. We still have lots of places open. Conference registration will close in about 2 weeks. All you need to do is go to the website, sca-roadside.org, and the first thing you'll see when the website comes up is how to register for the conference. So without further ado, I'm going to turn it over to Kevin, and he's going to tell us about some of the things we're going to see and some of the reasons why we're going to Niagara. So Kevin, you can start sharing your screen, please. Oh, you're muted, by the way, Kevin. Here, let me see if you can unmute yourself. Where are we? You should be able to unmute yourself. Oh, there you go.
Okay.
Yeah, now we can hear you.
Now I'm in. Now, this will be the hardest part of the presentation, is getting the images up. But let's see if this will work.
We did practice this. So, oh, there you go.
Am I in? Okay. We're not done yet.
No, we're not seeing any pictures, but you have started screen sharing.
Do you see any pictures?
No. Did you click on before you started screen sharing, did you click on the actual picture that you want to?
Hang on there. All right, let's.
Okay.
Let me get back into this.
Yeah, go to your files and click on the actual picture. One moment, folks. Do not adjust your set. We're almost there.
All right. There was a problem with opening the thing, but I got it going.
Okay, so now go to share. Share that picture. There it is. All right, open it up. Full screen.
All right, we're ready to go.
Yeah, you're ready to go. Okay, take it away, Ken.
You're looking at Niagara Falls. Is everybody seeing it?
Yeah, we can see it.
Okay, so this may look familiar to you. This is Frederick Church's view of Niagara Falls from 1857. And so what I wanted to talk about today is just kind of like giving us a little bit of a background and some insight on some of the sites we're going to see, and how to put it in some sort of a context, and kind of getting a little bit of the flavor for what this trip is all about. So we're going to one of probably the oldest, North America's oldest major natural attraction. That people have been going to Niagara Falls since at least since Europeans have been coming to North America. And with this painting by Frederick Church, it kind of defined Niagara Falls as part of that American wilderness sublime that in the 19th century was an attempt at sort of creating an identity for the United States. And that identity came to be its expanding frontier and the expansion of the conquest of that frontier. And the Hudson River school painters like Frederick Church sort of represented this kind of ideal of an American sublime. And this concept of a sublime is using an older Edward Burke idea that there were two ideals when it came to interpreting and appreciating a landscape painting. There was the sublime and there was the beautiful. And the sublime so was associated with a particular host of emotions like awesomeness and terror and an overwhelming kind of a sense of God's ultimate power. And the beautiful was more of a pastoral scene representing kind of a contemplated contentedness and an expression of God's love. And so that's how these landscapes came to be interpreted through landscape painting that was picked up by the Hudson River School painters in the early to mid 19th century. So the interesting thing for us is we have this background context and this representation of Niagara as a part of the wilderness sublime. And this is 1857. Now, this painting is 7 feet by 3 feet. And when it was revealed in an art exposition in New York City, it was the only painting in the exhibition. It was the only one. It was in a darkened room with a light on it, and people paid a quarter to see it, and tens of thousands of people showed up to see this one painting. And it kind of sealed the definition of Niagara as part of that wilderness sublime. But I want to call your attention to this. Do you see my cursor here? See my cursor here spinning around, Brian? You there, Brian?
Yes, yeah, we can see it.
All right, you see my cursor, right?
Yep.
You're the background guy, right? You're the Edric man.
Yeah, I'm the big man. Yes, Johnny, we can see your cursor.
All right. Oh, and by
It
the
looks
way,
wonderful. It's great.
Yeah. By the way, yeah, that's what I want to hear from you. And by the way, like so people under 50 who wouldn't get that, do we have any members under 50?
Well, you'd be
So I
surprised
think
to know that we do.
everybody probably gets it. All right. So do you see this little thing I'm circling right here in this painting?
Yep.
That little teeny tiny puny tower dwarfed by the awesome immensity of Niagara Falls.
Yeah.
This is Augustus's Porter Terrapin Tower. It's basically an observation deck that was built in 1829. So despite the fact that we have this representation of kind of a frontier wilderness sublime, It had already been conquered by tourists. And so that this little representation of a tourist observation tower is in Church's depiction of Niagara Falls. And that's kind of the essence of why the SCA is going to Niagara Falls. This sort of like overlapping of a primary natural attraction and this layer upon layer upon layer of tourist landscapes that have been built on this one natural feature. So the falls ultimately, did this move for us there, Brian?
Yeah.
All right, we're in business.
Great.
So that the falls are all about seeing the falls and seeing the falls from as many points of view as you can possibly see it, so that you can kind of capture the idea of the sublime and of the beautiful, and of a later ideal that came out of the Ruskinian Great Britain, the picturesque. And so the tourists would go there and try to capture these emotions while looking at the falls, and to a large degree it still exists. There's this undercurrent of disappointment when people go to the falls and they see it, and that goes from the very first tourists all the way up to the present day, that there's an expectation that isn't met by the falls. And in the early writings about the falls, this expectation basically is it's not sublime enough. Like they're expecting something sublime, and they're realizing it's not sublime. And it's surrounded by commercialization and even industrialization that is anything but the wilderness sublime. But in most cases, at least the literati who have written about the Niagara Falls have come to appreciate the beauty of Niagara Falls. So the whole tourist landscape. What's that, Brian?
I was just going to say that this is probably the right time to mention Oscar Wilde's famous line about Niagara Falls, when Niagara Falls was the honeymoon capital of the world, that Niagara Falls was the second greatest disappointment of any honeymoon.
Well, there you go. And there's an awesome book that is actually titled that. You can see this.
Yeah, there you go. Yeah.
Greatest disappointment. This was written by Karen Dubinsky.
I've read it.
And
Great.
so it's a lot of fun. It's honeymooning and tourism at Niagara Falls.
Yeah, it's great.
So the Victorian tourist then and the tourist now, it's all about going there and seeing the falls from above, seeing the falls from below, seeing the falls from behind. And to these attractions go back to the early 19th century. Cave of the Winds was there before Church's painting of Niagara, a way to get in behind that ledge, albeit a ledge that kept collapsing and closing down the Cave of the Winds. So you can still go to this attraction, but it's more a set of wooden steps and decks that you get soaking wet on while being under the falls, trying to understand all the sublimity of it. But the thing is, it's like, what do you do after you've seen the falls? What is there to do after you've contemplated all of this nature? Miniature golf, of course.
Of course.
So that this has always been the duality of Niagara. So you go there to a dinosaur miniature golf course, and you play a couple of rounds. And so what does these dinosaur miniature golf course have to do with Niagara Falls? Well, absolutely nothing. But that duality is exactly why SCA is there, to see this sort of like this juxtaposition between this stunning natural wonder and this almost parasitic tourist landscape that has attached itself to it and has evolved over generations of tourists that have visited the falls. So there you go. You get tired of seeing the falls, you could always go to play around in miniature golf, or maybe see an upside down house. Like what is this? What is up with the upside down house? It's here's on Clifton Hill. So everything that is amazing in the falls, a few steps away on Clifton Hill, there's even more amazing of a completely and discongruous kind of juxtaposition. between nature and, let's say, ice cream on the Midway, or drinking. This idea of seeing the falls and then going
Oh my
drinking,
God.
that goes way back.
Kevin, I think we should
So,
warn the people that are coming that if they see people like this on the streets, to avoid them and cross to the other side, because that looks like trouble right there. I gotta
by the way, the people should know that this is how this trip was planned.
Exactly. That's right. You're on a
It,
platter, right? So I'm
that
loving
there
it.
was more of this than look. That's here's my cursor. That's a lot of flight over here. That's people are about to take off with that flight.
By the way, but
Or how about this?
yeah, but
You can see nature's majesty, or you can see a horse made out of spoons.
and we're going to all
And
these places. That bar, actually, that the picture of us drinking beer in is attached to the hotel. So it's easy
right, you can
access.
have
So
that
right
experience
there,
that you
right
don't even
there, you
have to
can
put
walk.
your shoes on.
You don't even have to put your shoes on to get into that bar. It's a brew pub,
Right.
actually.
So the people who wrote travel writers who went to Niagara Falls, and believe me, in the 19th century, every single travel writer went to Niagara Falls. They even then they were talking about this weird juxtaposition where hucksters and hacks are trying to get them to go to some sort of museum or some kind of weird attraction. There's always Indian souvenirs being sold, which caused them to think like, what does Indian souvenirs have to do with Niagara Falls? Well, what does a horse made out of spoons have to do with Niagara Falls? So this we're just engaging in a tradition that goes way back, and we'll be there. You will see that we have free passes to this and other wonders at these various auditoriums that have always been a part of Niagara Falls, housed in this kind of multicolored Empire State Building tipped over onto Clifton Hill Street. That's okay. Let me call this to your attention, so that we can kind of understand this through what I call the tourist attraction diversion model, where it's that here you are, Brian. Here's Brian. Here he's a tourist. It's that's the way this works is that tourists are attracted to some sort of a primary attraction, like Niagara Falls. Nobody, many people have said, I want to go see Niagara Falls, but few people have said, I want to go see House of Frankenstein at Niagara Falls. It's only after you get to Niagara Falls that you're like, hey, there's a House of Frankenstein here. So that's we have it's right down the street. You can walk. You don't even have to put your shoes on for that. So it's there's a primary attraction, Niagara Falls, and then there's these directly related accessories. These are ways in which tourists see the primary attraction, so that they're directly related to the primary attraction, like the Maid of the Mist boat. And in addition to that, we have indirectly related tourist services, the gas, food, and lodging. So here's the SCA all over this, directly related accessories and indirectly related tourist services that the service puts the tourists in direct contact with a primary attraction and the infrastructure in order to be able to do this. But over here is tourist diversion. This is kind of like the sway to something that has nothing to do with the primary attraction. The tourist diversions, like, let's say, House of Frankenstein. House of Frankenstein and other diversions are attracted to the tourists, so that there isn't a direct link between the diversions and the primary attraction. The tourists are there because of the primary attraction, but the tourist diversions, the miniature golf courses, the auditoriums, the House of Frankensteins, they're there because of the tourists. And so this relationship, this kind of like spatial relationship, exists all over the place, where you find a Yellowstone or a Grand Canyon or a Yosemite or a Mammoth Cave, and then you see these tourist diversions that are adjacent to it, which makes it a fascinating place for people like us to study who's interested in commercial landscapes. So here is us. This is the General Brock up here. And it has the General Brock has been there since 1929, and it's an awesome place to stay. And so we'll definitely enjoy that. It's right adjacent to one of two casinos, and on adjacent to Clifton Hill, which is here over to the left. And so the casino is on the site of what used to be called Maple Leaf Village, which was an old amusement park that was eventually kind of converted into one of these two casinos. So talk about going to someplace without putting your shoes on. You can literally walk to this casino without ever even going outside. So there it is. Here's that image again of Marilyn Monroe. And is that Queen Elizabeth II or the Queen Mother?
Yeah, no, that's Queen Elizabeth II, although I don't think the bubble gum was part of the original picture.
I'm sure it was. I'm sure that Marilyn Monroe and Queen Elizabeth II hung out here and chewed bubble gum. I mean, why would that portrait lie, Brian?
Well, I don't know why they would lie, but you know what? I didn't know this, but it's quite possible that the Queen Elizabeth stayed at this hotel because the royalty has been to Niagara Falls, and this would be the place they would stay.
Well, I looked into that, and it just so happens that Queen Elizabeth II didn't stay at the General Brock, but she was there. She was there in 1951.
Okay.
She came in 1951 with Prince Philip, and they were on some sort of I think they were on a Trans-Canada tour.
Probably.
And they stopped at Niagara Falls, and they didn't stay overnight at Niagara Falls, but there was some sort of a little ceremony at the Brock. I think they had tea or something. Don't you British people have tea?
Yeah. Oh, yeah, absolutely. She
Yeah.
wasn't the queen actually at that point because she was crowned in 1953. So she still would have been the Princess Elizabeth.
She was Princess Elizabeth. That's right. And this is 51. So it's really just a matter of months. Her dad dies. Her dad is King George VI. Wasn't that your king?
Yeah, well, he was, yeah, long before, well, not long before, but before my time, a little before my time.
So the interesting thing about this is that Queen Elizabeth II, she was there in 51, and Marilyn is there in 52. So they actually are very close. There's your future queen right there.
Yeah.
There's Prince Philip. She's 25 years old. It's just literally a matter of months before her coronation. And then
the interesting thing too, Kevin, as you can see in this picture, is that Prince Philip, even though he's her husband, he always has to stay a couple of paces behind her. He always has to be behind her. And there's the picture showing it right here.
Yeah, I understand that he loved that.
Yeah, well, maybe. I don't know. I don't think
he did not love that.
I know. I'm sure he didn't love it.
He did not love that, but he didn't have a choice. So then, then the next year, we have Marilyn Monroe coming, which is kind of a queen of a different part, kind of a different type of queen. And I just love this, that here's Marilyn Monroe and Niagara, a raging torrent of emotion that even nature can't control. So have you, we should raise your hand. Can people raise their hand? Raise your hand if you've seen Niagara.
I actually haven't seen it, to be honest with
you. Zoom has a yellow hand that you can raise.
Yeah, they've got something. Yeah, if you can put your hand up.
But if you could.
Oh, here we go. So, there's a bunch of raised hands. So
there's a bunch of raised. Okay, so this is must-see TV before you. Oh, I see the hands going up.
Yeah,
people have figured that out. This is must-see TV before going to Niagara Falls. You got to watch this movie.
Right.
This, and it actually plays into a number of sites that we see, and we can kind of use Niagara as kind of a jumping board for our itinerary, because they were there already. Wherever we were going on the Canadian side, they were already. So here's our main people there. This is, of course, Marilyn. She's Rose Loomis in the picture. And she is sultry and and bad. She's just bad. This is her dress. This dress is she was screen tested in this dress in both pink and red. So those were the two options. They went with the pink one, and here's our happy couple. These are the wholesome Americans that come over and they stay at the Rainbow Cabins, where Rose is staying with her shell-shocked Korean War vet George Loomis, and this is Roy and Polly Cutler, and so that's the wholesome couple. And then Rose and George Loomis, they've got problems. But the cool thing is this: that a lot of the action takes place at Rainbow Cabins, and you can see they drive into Rainbow Cabins. You can see the falls are right behind it. Here's Niagara Falls, New York. And this is them coming into it. And it's this cool little cabin court. There's Roy and Polly there. And so many people have come to Niagara Falls asking, where are the Rainbow Cabins? And this is sort of a clue as to where they are. Here's Horseshoe Falls back here.
Oh,
Here
yeah.
are the cabins. And this is one of the pavilions at Inspiration Point. There were a couple of pavilions that were built along the edge here when the Niagara Parks and River Railway, which was an interurban railroad that connected with the Great Gorge route, basically an electric trolley, was the main source of transportation along Niagara Falls. And two pavilions were constructed where the trolley stopped. And each one of these people could get out, they take the picture, they get back on the trolley. And this was one of them at Inspiration Point. So the cabins are fabricated for the movie. They built them for the movie, and then they demolished them immediately after the movie. But it's now here is this overview. This is from 1935, and if you follow my cursor, do you see this little thing right here? Can you eyeball that there, Brian?
Yeah. Yeah.
This thing, that's one of those interurban cars.
Oh, wow.
And it's stopped right here at Inspiration Point. So here's Table Rock, here's Horseshoe Falls, here's Table Rock, and then this is Queen Victoria Park. Queen Victoria Park is the landscape park space that's on the Canadian side. And so, but if you follow this down, you follow that the interurban tracks down a little bit further, there's another pavilion right here, and that is Rambler's Rest. This was when they redesigned this, it kind of became a pinch point where a lot of people, all the tourists, they come down this sidewalk and they go to Table Rock. So it was a pinch point here that kind of like got everybody backed up. And so ultimately, and this was just in the 90s, Inspiration Point survived into the 90s, it was bulldozed. But Rambler's Rest still exists. So this was one of those, old interurban stations that is still on the edge, and it looks a lot like that scene. Now in Niagara, this is the place where like all the young people are having a hootenanny, where they're playing the music, and Marilyn Monroe comes out and she puts her record on Kiss. Kiss was the big tune throughout the entire movie, and then her crazy husband George comes busting out and smashes the record up. And that looked like it took place here. Now, I'm telling you, if you didn't see this movie, you're gonna have to.
I gotta see it. I gotta see it for sure.
You're gonna have to do your homework before you come to Niagara Falls.
Otherwise,
how do you know what you're supposed to look at?
Yeah. Now, Kevin, just before you go on, we got about 10 to 12 minutes left. So if you want to hit some American stuff too, we've got to move on.
Let me tell you this. I got 10 to 12 minutes left of this one.
Yeah, I know.
So set on. We'll be moving on here. All right. Here's the funny thing. There was a Rainbow Cabins in Niagara Falls at the same time that the movie was taking place. This is up on Murray Hill in Fallsview, and unfortunately, it's not there any longer, but it nonetheless was there. So this is the Sholkoff power plant. In the movie, this is what's defined as the shredded wheat plant. It is. Roy and Polly Cutler get to Niagara Falls because Roy works for shredded wheat, and he invents a shredded wheat stuffing for turkey. And that's what, and then they take a cut, they show this scene here and they say, hey, look, I can see the shredded wheat plant. But surely that's not the shredded wheat plant.
That's not the shredded wheat plant. This is
the shredded wheat plant, which was in Niagara Falls in the 1890s. And they tied the shredded wheat with the power of the falls. We'll see this on the American tour. The elevator is still there. The factory is not. They stopped making shredded wheat there in 01, 2001. But we'll see the shredded wheat plant on the Canadian side, which is on Clifton Hill, and we'll see that on the trip. So this is what what was known as the Mill District on the New York side, and the artificial falls that were created by diverting the falls into the tail races that ran these mills. And it was all of the races and holes that they drilled through this cliff to drop the water that eventually caused that entire cliff to collapse on the power plant that was beneath it in 1956. So interestingly enough, they clipped this scene in Niagara in 1953, and 3 years later, that entire cliff collapsed on that plant. We'll see this too from the Niagara Gorge side. All right, so there's a Rainbow Bridge, our connection over to the American side, and this Caroline, and there's it's the Caroline Tower at Rainbow Bridge, and there's our dead Marilyn Monroe. Oh, spoiler alert! I mean, she's bad. She's trying to get her husband killed, and he ends up killing her, and then takes his boat over the falls. But here, while we're at Rainbow Bridge, there's your king again. Your king, it dedicated the bridge. That was Queen Elizabeth II's father. So do you remember that? Do you remember that, Brian?
Say it again, Kevin.
Do you remember when this happened back in 1939?
Well, I wasn't around for a little while after that. But that was the tour that King George and his wife, also named Elizabeth, so we call them Queen Elizabeth, the Queen Mother. Right. They made a tour of Canada just before the beginning of the Second World War. I think it was to rally the troops because they could see it coming. And there it is. There's proof positive.
And guess where they went? Niagara Falls.
Niagara Falls, of course. Who wouldn't? They're tourists, right?
Yes. All right. Let's keep this thing going. This was these scenic tunnels. We'll be at Table Rock. We won't see. I mean, people can go down and see what was called the scenic tunnels, and now know behind the falls. This is where George Loomis kills the person that his wife's having an affair with, and we won't go there. But I've already been there, and that's me at.
That's you.
That's
oh
me
my God! What happened?
Yes, right. Age. So
okay.
At Table Rock, we'll be at Table Rock. So Table Rock is on our list, and you can still go down into the scenic tunnels and see the falls from behind.
You look like a movie star there, Kevin. Maybe you should be in the movies.
I see that. So this is Table Rock. This is kind of like the view of like Frederick Church did his painting as if he was elevated and over the river at this location. So we'll work our bus tour out so that we can run down here and get this classic view of the falls. And this was where the front was. This was where it was thoroughly commercialized as early as the 1830s. This is a shot from 1862 with its observation pagodas and the Bartlett Museum. And then here's Table Rock, which then for the next 100 years kept just falling away, like bit by bit. It kept collapsing and falling away. And eventually the province of Ontario, just like on the American side, bought up this entire rim in 1885 and then got Frederick Law Olmsted to design a park space for this and this on the American side as well. So even though Table Rock isn't there, you can see a nub of it. So if you know where to look, I'll point it out when we get out of the bus. You can still see a nub of where Table Rock was, which is where everybody went on the Canadian side to see the Horseshoe Falls. And this, where the front was, where all those museums and souvenir stands and hotels, is now Queen Victoria Park on the Canadian side. Our hotel is right here, so it's within walking distance. And then this is Clifton Hill. So the morning, we're headed on to the Maid in the Mist. This is we're actually not on the Maid of the Mist. This is, if you see blue people boats, they're Americans. Red people boats, they're Canadians. And the Canadian boat, it's as it should be, right? And the border is right here between the two. So it's on the American side, it's still called the Maid of the Mist, but this is the Hornblower Niagara.
Right.
So just so that you're not confused, the Maid of the Mist launches from the American side. But the Hornblower Niagara is the one that we'll be on the Canadian side. So if they're trying to sell you a blue raincoat, that should be a sign you're on the wrong boat. You got to get the red raincoat. That's us. And so kind of like take us right up in there into the mist of the Horseshoe Falls, rolls it back. And it's actually a fairly short trip, but nonetheless awesome, and keeps in with our tradition of somehow getting on a boat. Right. So we've been on boats for a lot of our conferences.
Yeah.
And so as not to break that trend, we'll be on a boat again. All right. So this is the original Maid of the Mist, going through the Whirlpool Rapids in 1861. And the original Maid of the Mist was built as a ferry. But when these bridges were built, this is the suspension bridge that was constructed over the narrowest part of the gorge. When that was constructed in 1855, there was no more need for the ferry, and so they started losing money. And they sold the Maid of the Mist and ran it through the rapids to be sold to some firm in Montreal who said, okay, we'll buy your boat, but you got to get it to Queenston. That means you got to run it through the rapids, which they did. And it wasn't until 1885 that there was enough tourists going to the falls, largely because of the railroad, that they put the Maid in the Mist back on the river as a sightseeing boat. So this bridge here kind of lays down the foundation for the things that we will see on our tours. And that's when the railroad came. They came across the suspension bridge. It was the world's longest suspension bridge at the time, but it was built over the narrowest part of the gorge. So check this out. That if it's a red line, it's a railroad. And so this is the falls down here where I'm circling. Here's Goat Island, but here's where the railroad crossed on this bridge. And so it created this weird duality in Niagara Falls that has always caused it to be confusing. Two towns on the American side. It's the town of Niagara Falls, New York, which was basically a tourist town close to the falls, and the town of Niagara City, which was where the train station at the suspension bridge was. And then the same thing happened on the Canadian side. Down here at Falls, a tourist town near where the falls were, and then this other town where the train station was at the suspension bridge. So this was originally Elgin, it became Clinton, and then over here, this was the falls, which eventually everything was merged. So that you have a Niagara Falls, New York, and a Niagara Falls, Canada. But take a look at the yellow.
Just before you go on, too, just as an aside. So as I'm sure you're going to say, all this, the red line is gone now, and including that, still there is a bike path. But this is in frequent use. And the station, if you take Amtrak from New York, Albany, the station that you get off is this same station right here. Our hotel is about there, or maybe a little bit down, maybe about there. Well, if that's Clifton Hill, our hotel is right here. So it's very close to the station.
Yeah. So if you take Amtrak, you're getting off this station here if you're getting off on the Canadian side, right, which is downtown Niagara Falls.
Right.
But you could also get off on the American side at the Amtrak station that's over here. Actually, this is Via Rail. Amtrak doesn't cross the river, does it?
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
Via Rail.
It sure does.
Oh, it does?
It goes right across there and it goes up to Toronto.
Oh, it goes to Toronto.
Yeah,
You're coming from Toronto, it's via rail or Amtrak. If
right.
you're coming from the United States, then it's Amtrak. But it's over here. Our hotel is way down here.
Yep. But that's a 10-minute
It's
taxi ride, or there's buses,
yeah.
frequent buses that go through there.
So the tracks, this was the Michigan Central tracks that went on the Canadian side. That's no longer there. And then this is the New York Central tracks that went through downtown Niagara Falls, New York, also no longer there. But take a look at the yellow lines. This is where the train station was. It was at on Clifton Hill. And the straight path between the Michigan Central Station on Clifton Hill and the river at the Maid of the Mist ferry landing, this is Clifton Hill. These are stranger paths.
Right.
This was the Clifton Hotel. Our hotel is located right next to it. And so these are pedestrian-oriented stranger paths for people coming off the station here will walk straight down the hill to the main hotel on the Canadian side, which is the Clifton Hotel. And then this was the ferry, the Maid of the Mist landing right below it. Now, on the American side, the same thing. People get off on the New York Central Station, and this is Fall Street, the stranger's path between the New York Central Station and Prospect Park on the American side. So the Rainbow Bridge now is right here between the two. But those two strangers' paths are kind of like the two dual anchors on either side of that international border. We'll see both of them, Clifton Hill and Fall Street on the American side. So this is it. This is that stranger's path, a pedestrian-oriented street from the railroad era looks today. Still decidedly pedestrian-oriented, but this is why it's there. And then over time, so with the automobile comes in and changes things on both sides of the border. This is right off the cover of the SCA Journal for Pete's awesome article on Niagara Falls. So I cribbed this right from the SCA Journal because it looks great. It's Clifton Hill, designed for pedestrians in the railroad era, with a bunch of cars stuffed in it. And clearly, this is going to cause a problem, but it would also provide interest for us SCA people, because the automobile lays its own foundation on Niagara Falls. And so this is the Honeymoon City Motel. And now with the automobile here, and these post-war motels are way too big for Clifton Hill. So they expand out Lundy's Lane past the battlefield of 1812 and all the way out here, where it's even as early as the 1930s on Route 20, which was sort of like the back road to Hamilton and Toronto. It becomes a string of motor courts like the Lundy's Lane camp that expand into, this is the Park Lane Motel, into an entire motel strip that extends out there at Lundy's Lane, because after 1939, this is where Queen Elizabeth Way intersects with Niagara Falls. So this is Canada's first limited access expressway, coming from Toronto to Hamilton. And then right here in 1939, there's the last interchange is right here at Lundy's Lane. And here's Lundy's Lane is Route 20, extends into Route 20. So this was the old road that people took into the core of Canada, Toronto, Hamilton, and then it was bypassed by Queen Elizabeth Way. But Queen Elizabeth Way intersected Lundy's Lane right here and creates the infrastructure for that motel strip that we'll see when we go out to Lundy's Lane. I love this, where the signs and even the lampposts is ER.
Right.
What's that all about, Brian?
So ER stands for Elizabeth Regina, Regina being Latin for queen. So also, and you'll see GR, her father was George Rex, Rex being Latin for king. So yes, you're absolutely right. If you go along the Queen Elizabeth Way in the Toronto area, when you go over bridges, they have fancy lampposts that have this ER inscribed into it to remind you that this is named after Elizabeth the Queen. But we're talking about the Queen Mother here, That's the Elizabeth, not Queen Elizabeth II. It's her mom, who was also Queen Elizabeth. That's what this
Right.
one is.
See, that's your queen. You know all about her.
Yeah,
So yes, this
absolutely.
is the Queen Mother, and so the weird thing is the Queen Elizabeth Way is sort of like the Pennsylvania Turnpike of Canada,
Right.
where they both open up around the same time, 1939, 1940, and they both kind of had the same design standards. But when you go there, you're looking for like these old kind of artifacts from 1939 of when they originally built the road, and you're expecting it to be the QEW, which don't you Canadians call this the QEW?
Yeah, so that's the Queen Elizabeth Way. That's what the Q
Right, and
is, the Queen Elizabeth Way.
right, and when you get there, you see ER,
Yeah,
not
because it's named
QEW.
after the Queen, who is Elizabeth Regina.
Right. So when you go to Niagara Falls, look for the ER lampposts.
Yep, I
There's a
see
couple
one.
in Niagara Falls.
Yep.
Yeah.
Now,
Uh,
Kevin, we're out of time. We've got like 2 minutes
dude,
left.
it's 9 o'clock.
Yeah, I know. We got a few questions, and I got to do
Yeah.
the wrap up too.
Yeah. All right. It's but this was like so with 15. 15 will be out.
Okay. All right.
All right.
Okay.
All right. And by the way, this is just the beginning. And Niagara Falls will have 3 days of this.
Yes, exactly. That's great. That's what we want.
Uh, do you know what this is, Brian?
Well, it's an interchange on the QEW, but I'm not exactly sure where.
Lundy's Lane.
Oh, that's Lundy's Lane. Okay, because actually, interestingly enough, there is no interchange at Lundy's Lane on the QEW today. It's beforehand. We have an expressway coming into Niagara, 420 to 420.
Right. So look how country it is.
Oh yeah.
This is in 1944. So all of this it's because of this interchange is why we have that motel strip out there. And it'll look decidedly different when we get there than this 1944 view. We'll see a number of motels that still stand like this. The A1 is kind of awesome, which is there. And so we'll see it's some space age motels, like the Space Motel is out there. And of course, this is where our lunch is at the Flying Saucer Restaurant.
Yeah.
This is 1972.
Who are those two dudes that keep showing up in these pictures? Like
I don't know.
Stalking you or something?
We're supposed to. It's the inside is awesome. So we're kind of like in some sort of a flying spaceship here. And look at that again. We're supposed to be encouraging people to come to this conference, but I think this is discouraging them. Don't you think?
Well, not necessarily. I would encourage some. It would encourage me. Especially the sitting on the front there.
With these two characters,
yeah,
they look sketchy. So this is where our lunch will be. Now, over on the American side. So this is the view from Prospect Point on the Niagara Falls. So we'll see this on our little walkthrough of downtown Niagara Falls. And this was sort of the Clifton Hill on the American side. It acted more as a downtown, but it was merged with the tourist activity of the American side. Theaters were there, like the Cataract, all the major hotels were there. All the old hotels from the 19th century were on Main Street, which intersected Fall Street. And so that the downtown and the tourist area was lined up on Fall Street in New York City. Unfortunately, it's suffered from the urban renewal of 1965. So do you see this model here on the right? Whenever, especially in the 50s through 70s, when the planners would roll out a model that looked like this. Now, Brian, you were a planner.
Yeah.
Is this exciting for you?
Oh, well, it's not exciting for me because I know how disastrous this whole thing was. But if I was a planner in the 50s, I would say this is the future utopia right here. We got to do it.
Exactly. So that was the idea that Fall Street had already started to become a little bit tawdry as people moved to the suburbs. And it's like, okay, let's think big here. We're just going to bulldoze the entire thing and make this really cool downtown Niagara Falls. And so they bulldoze this entire thing, and it doesn't look really nearly as cool as anticipated. Nonetheless, once you tear it down, you're done.
Yeah.
and it's better than it has been. It's basically, what do we do with a downtown street that has no downtown buildings on it?
Yeah.
And then Niagara Falls, New York, has been trying to redesign that mistake ever since the 1960s. But we'll see their efforts when we go over there. Now, we should recognize that the Lundy's Lane on the Canadian side also has an American counterpart. It's US 62. Unlike Lundy's Lane feeds right into Ferry Street, which feeds right into Clifton Hill. So the pedestrian railroad oriented Clifton Hill becomes an auto oriented Lundy's Lane. But US 62 didn't line up with Falls Street. It basically bypassed it entirely, came in on Pine Avenue through Little Italy. And when you went the other way, US 62 connected with the New York Thruway. So this was the motel strip on the American side, but it didn't feed into Falls Street, causing Falls Street to be abandoned by tourists after World War II, who went out here to go to motels like Henwood's Motel on US 62, and many, many others. I took this picture. I stayed at the Bel Air in 1988, and it still had a sense of that old US 62 motel strip. Now, most of these have been torn down since. Most of the cool signs have been torn down. But we'll take a look at US 62 and see the ones that still remain. The Moonlight Motel is still out there on 62. And of course, the Bido Paris
This is my
Motel.
favorite. I love this
Yeah.
one.
It's just, it's awesome. So there's still remnant bits. Both US 62 and Lundy's Lane, the motels have gotten kind of tawdry since then, as people have reconcentrated, tourists have reconcentrated into the hotels closer to casinos and closer to the falls. But there's this Isaiah's Second Coming house of folk art in Niagara Falls that we'll see when we're over there. We'll get the story of that. But another tradition in the SCA is finding the roadside folk art that's nearby and kind of checking that out. It's downtown Niagara Falls next to the railroad on the New York side. And this is downtown Niagara Falls on the Canadian side, both of which have suffered different fates. So we'll take a look at these little seen downtowns that were closer to the bridge that crossed between the two countries when we're on our tour. Here's that cool Tip Top Tailors that is a neat little entrance apron in downtown. And then there's those two characters again.
Yeah, those guys they stick around like a bad smell. You can't get rid of them.
So that's here. So calling somebody who cares, you can still apparently you can still use a phone booth in Canada.
Yeah, apparently.
That is in the downtown. All right. So, the Spanish air cars have been going over the Whirlpool Rapids since 1916. Is on our list. It's just this really crazy feature where the Niagara River comes in and then circles around literally in a big whirlpool as it's eating out an older channel that was there before it was filled up with glacial debris. And then the water kind of like circles around and then goes back out. So it's literally a whirlpool of water that in 1916 they built the Spanish air car over, and that's on our list of things to do. Going past the hydroelectric dams, that's Robert Moses and the Seraton Beck, where they built the floral clock. You can kind of recreate that 1958 picture of you.
Yeah.
And this is another great tourist attraction that we're going to see. Now, falls in the line of an extension of Queen Victoria Park that goes down along the gorge on the Canadian side. This is Queenston Heights, and that's the Brock Monument. The Brock Monument has been there since I think the 1820s.
Maybe a little after that, I think, but not too much.
No, the original one was built really early,
right?
And then you crazy Canadians blew it up.
Well, not the Canadians, the Fenians blew it up. Coming across from the Americans, they blew it up as a anti-British act of terrorism, basically.
So these Fenians aren't Canadians?
No, they're American. They're Irish Americans who are trying to get at Britain to, let Ireland go free.
I got you. So they blow up the monument, then they rebuild it even bigger, which is
Here.
kind of the way to do it. Go big or go home. But this is part of the tourist landscape of Old Niagara Falls. And as much as it's a fascinating neoclassical monument in its own right, this thing has a spiral staircase in it. So for the if for all those who are interested in coming with us, we're going up this thing. Have you
Yep.
ever been up the monument,
I never
Brian?
have. I've never been up it, to be honest with you, but I'll go up. I'll go up this time for sure.
This is me going up it.
Oh my goodness.
So you can it's
Narrow.
inside the column, and it just spirals until you get up to the top, and then can look at like you're in some sort of 19th century prison. You look at these little holes at the top of the monument, but it gives you this awesome view of the lower Niagara River out here to Lake Ontario. You can see all the way across it to Toronto.
Yep, you
And
can.
so to experience that is
Oh my God.
this. Here's our last bit, and then we're wrapping up here, Brian.
Okay, good.
It's, this is me going over to Buffalo, and that on the American side, we'll work our way all the way down to Buffalo. And in order to figure out what is there to see in Buffalo, I fortified myself like a Canadian.
Hmm.
With a Tim Hortons coffee. I'm really more like a Buffalonian. These are Buffalo Sabre donuts. They're
Okay.
but
But
I mean, Buffalo Sabres, they were all Canadians on that team anyway, right?
exactly right. On most American hockey teams. But this is called, what you did there is called doing a Timmy's run. You did a Timmy's run, Tim's.
Timmy's run, right?
Timmy's
Yeah,
run to
right.
get the coffee and the donuts.
Right. So over there we have the carousel or Herschel's Carousel Museum. That's still on the table, isn't it?
Yeah. Oh yeah, absolutely, for sure.
So here's the thing, they all these antique carousels that were built for amusement parks. That is kind of an extension of what the SCA is interested in. But oddly enough, do you know what else they have here? A pure oil station.
Oh, interesting.
I
And is
don't know how the Herschel Carousel Museum got a little pure oil station, but they got one.
interesting.
So it's that will be kind of a surprise. Like we'll go in there, and I guarantee you we'll bring in 2 busloads of people who will walk right past the carousel horses to take
Straight to the
pictures of their
Purell
old gas
station.
station.
Yeah, so true, so true.
Then this is Pierce Arrow Museum is still on the list as well,
Yeah,
right, Brian?
absolutely. Yes, it is.
So this is Buffalo's kind of upscale automobile. They built Pierce Arrows in Buffalo from 1901 to 1938. It was eventually bought by Studebaker, and ultimately that was bad for Pierce Arrow and Studebaker. Studebaker, didn't they also buy Packard?
I'm not
And
sure.
eventually they all went under.
Right.
But we'll take a look at what they got to show us down there in Buffalo. But our trajectory in Buffalo is along Main Street, which has some really awesome SCA cool stuff along it that we'll take a look at. Here's down in the theater district in Buffalo. This is a 1926, one of those wrap and wrap theaters from neoclassical theaters covered in terracotta that they built by the hundreds. Shea's Buffalo Theater is still down there next to an awesome uh,
Greyhound bus terminal?
Greyhound bus station by what's this guy's name again? Aerosmith?
I
Not
don't,
Aerosmith.
I'm not
I
sure.
think that was a rock band from the 70s.
Oh, I don't know.
You know who I'm talking about. I know somebody will comment. Somebody will comment to
Okay.
Aerosmith. Like Aerosmith, had a rock band, but before that, they designed Greyhound bus terminals.
Really?
And yeah, oh yeah.
Okay.
Everybody knows that. So that's on the list. Great streamlined form for
Oh,
this
yeah.
thing from about 1940. It's Main Street Buffalo was an automobile row, and so we'll see some remnants of the automobile row that peaked. It's between the 1920s and the 1950s before they kind of scattered further out to the suburbs. But this is a 1920s showroom. Do you know what automobiles they sold here, Bry?
It was Pierce Arrow, I think, wasn't it?
Pierce Arrow, yes. So this was the Pierce Arrow showroom on Main Street. So only the really high-end auto showrooms with, you know, high style architecture were built on these automobile roads, and that was Main Street in Buffalo. Eventually, after Pierce Arrow left, it was taken over by Cadillac. So then it turned into Cadillac show. Of course, they had a Packard showroom on Main Street. We'll see that, and a Ford assembly plant.
Yeah.
That was in the same automobile row, along with this, the awesome Lake Effect Diner. Our lunch on this day is right next to this.
Right.
So what is that? What is that restaurant? Steer?
It's the Steer Inn. The Steer Inn is where we're gonna have lunch, which is right beside this.
The Steer Inn is right beside this. Now,
And the guy, they're in the same ownership. So the owner of the Steer Inn is going to give us tours of this diner, like in small groups.
So it's just an awesome little place. This is a 1952 mountain view that used to be the China Buddha in Ardmore, Pennsylvania. So when Brian Bucko and I were doing our Diners of Pennsylvania book, it was a Chinese restaurant in the suburbs of Philly that was dragged out here to Buffalo and turned into the Lake Effect Diner, but they did just a great job in restoring it. And it's still open. You can go there and get a meal. And just down the street for dessert, Parkside Candies with its great little metal box neon sign there on the north end of Main Street. And then there's another diner on that day, is the Swan Street Diner. This was brought into the Larkin Square, and Larkin Square was the big giant Larkin industrial complex. It was a Larkin soap, and they did direct sales of soap and toiletry products with a lot of premiums. And then they manufactured a lot of these tchotchkes and handkerchiefs and furniture bits that they would sell along with their soap. And the plant was in Buffalo. The plant has been rehabbed, and they dragged this diner in from Newark, New York. It's a Sterling from the 1930s to be part of this project here in the Larkin district. So this plant was huge at the Larkin factories. And do you see this, what I'm circling over here, this plant right, this part of the building right here?
Yeah, you can see it.
Frank Lloyd Wright.
Yeah.
This is the Frank Lloyd Wright's Larkin administration building. So this was probably tantamount to the Johnson Wax building that we saw when we were in Wisconsin. That Frank Lloyd Wright also did an administration building for the Larkin Company. Unfortunately, the Larkin Company went bankrupt back in the 1940s, and then the city of Buffalo took over the administration building. And here you could, then they put it up for sale. So you could have bought that. Now for sale, Frank Lloyd Wright's administration building. Unfortunately, nobody bought it. And so they tore the whole thing down.
Oh,
the person who bought it wanted to rip the whole thing down for a truck stop they never built.
terrible.
But what is there, and we may see as in a drive-by, is this. Darwin Martin, who was the head guy at Larkin, he had Frank Lloyd Wright build his house, and his house is right off Main Street. So maybe we'll take a deviation to kind of like do a drive-by of the house. Louis Sullivan's building is also down there. We'll to kind of drive by that with its awesome facade of red terracotta, and that
Oh my God, they're
back to taco night in Canada. So I think we covered all the bases, and I'm taking a look at my clock here. We're not too bad. We're not too bad. So this should kind of give people an idea of the madness that we're after when we go up there and wander around Niagara Falls for 3 days.
Kevin, that was amazing. That was absolutely excellent. Now, we're running really late and we're starting to lose our people, so I'm not going to take any of the questions. However, there was, and people can look at it in the chat. Now, Deborah, when you ask a question to this crowd, Kevin, you get answers. So that person was a William Studwick Era Smith, A-R-R-A Smith. was the
Yeah,
architect
Aerosmith.
thing. And we've had 4 people report that back in. So that was good. Deborah Jane Seltzer remarks, when at Parkside Candies, don't miss the very rare opal glass sign behind it in the parking lot. So that's something we'll have to make sure to see. And then Nancy Sturm asked, if one is driving to suggest we park in the US and walk over. Now, the parking, if you're staying at one of the conference hotels, the parking is extremely expensive. We're talking $50 or $40 a night. So I would suggest that you do maybe park on the American side and walk across the bridge. The only thing is, the American side where the bridge is can be a little bit sketchy. I think you'd be okay, but you certainly would save a lot of money if you do that. You don't need to drive to Niagara because everything that we're doing in Niagara does not need a car. You will be able to do everything that we're doing on foot or on the public transit, which is excellent, or of course, on the buses. So there's one other thing I just want to see. Oh, Tom says, fantastic, nice work. So anyways, thank you so much, Kevin. That was an excellent overview of not only what things we're going to see, but what the provenance of all this was. A lot of historical background, which is amazing. So I just would encourage everybody who hasn't signed up for the conference yet, just go to the SCA's website. All the details are there, the itineraries, the information on the hotel accommodations, and everything that you need to know is there. And then just before we go, I'd like to remind everybody about next week's session, which is on Wednesday, June 11th at 8 p.m. Eastern, 5 Pacific. We'll welcome Isaac Jeffries, whose photos are a look into an unseen world within the Catskills and beyond the Borscht Belt, peering into other MCM remnants on the East Coast, specifically at night. So the SCA members will be receiving notification of that and the registration link through email, and others can register on the SCA's website directly. So thanks again, Kevin, for a most interesting presentation. The pictures are fantastic. If you've been watching this and you're not a member of the SCA, you will receive an email tonight inviting you to join. The recording of this will be available probably tomorrow, and the link will be sent to all the members as well in case they want to look at it to think about whether they'd like to come to the conference or not. And I strongly encourage everyone to do that. So with those final words, Kevin, is there any last words you'd like to say?
Well, I do have a question, and it has to do with the going over to the United States that we had talked about. Are we down with everybody on the bus, loading the bus on at the Brock?
Yes, we are. And so I consulted with border services on both sides, American and the Canadian, and they told me it would actually be faster to take everybody across on the buses. Like everybody has to get off the bus, but the rationale is if you walk, they only have 1 or 2 officers for pedestrians. And so there could be quite a lineup to speak to those officers. Whereas in the bus section, they have quite a bit more personnel, so they can process the people faster. And also, apparently, because of the political situation, and there's a little bit of disagreement between your president and our prime minister about the tariffs and all the rest of it, that
it's all political theater and bullshit.
Well, I realize that, but it cut Canadian tourism to the US quite a bit. The numbers are way down, which is good for us because that means there won't be as many cars going across, so they'll be able to deal with our people on the bus much better. So it actually has a small compensation right there. So, and I would also encourage anybody that's concerned about border issues, if you're an American citizen, there's no issue at all. The American border guards won't be harassing you. It's only people that are in the country on work permits and that sort of thing that may have some concerns. So don't let that bother you if you're thinking of coming.
It's not a problem. It's not a problem.
It's not a problem at all.
You're not in line any longer than if it was a toll booth.
Yeah, exactly. All right. Well, again, thank you so much, Kevin. And I would encourage everybody to visit the website, sign up, register. We're going to have a grand old time in Canada and the US. And keep in mind that the Canadian dollar is at 0.7 American, or 70 cents American right now. So your dollar goes way further in Canada. So if you're looking at things that are quoted to you in Canadian dollars, then just multiply that by 0.7. And that's what you pay in American dollars. So it can be a little easier on the budget as well. Okay, thanks again, and we will see everybody in Niagara, hopefully, and I like to wish everybody good night.